All right, Coach, another long season of Trash Pandas baseball coming to an end. I know this one probably not the way you hoped it would go. No matter what happens in the next couple of games, it'll be the first time the team is finished without reaching that 50-win threshold. Walk me through what the season's been like for you.
Uh, we've talked about this before a lot. I mean, every season is going to teach you different things. It's going to reveal different things. I mean, there's from a tangible win-loss standpoint, one of the more difficult years we've been through, obviously. That in and of itself is going to yield its own benefits down the road. But I think when you look at the individual success of certain guys, and you look at the impact that certain seasons can have on the organization long term, which is the main focus here, with what specifically a young starting rotation coming into its own, two young middle of the field defenders coming into their own too, in Denzi and Rada. When you look at pockets of things that have a chance to impact the organization long term, it's been an overwhelming success for me. It's one of those things too that your major leagues team is always playing for this season. Your player development department is playing for the next 10 years. And so it's when you look at individual successes combined with when you go through a year with this much adversity, some of which self-inflicted, some of which has been a little bit fluky. It's never just one thing. Resiliency is something that the players are going to need also. It's a very, very difficult industry. It's a very, very difficult game. It's a very, very difficult sport. So when you look at all those things and you combine all those things together, a lot of individuals and the group itself is going to benefit from this long term for sure.
Of course, you mentioned Denzer and Nelson, two guys that were absolutely stellar here and have gone on to do great things at the next level. How proud are you of what they've been able to do and show that it wasn't just, I can do this at AA, that they can do it as well at AAA?
Yeah, I mean, there's some professional satisfaction in that. And more than anything else, you get kind of the little bit of the proud dad kind of things where you look at what I've talked about this too, is that I don't think enough people give enough credit to how young Nelson really was 2 years ago. On opening day here in 2024, had he been a domestically born player, he would have been a high school senior. And we're talking about a high school senior that speaks English as a second language, that's playing every day in AA, that is ridiculously difficult. And it's ridiculously difficult enough if you get off to a great start, but he scuffled out of the gate and he stayed with it, and he never gets too high, he never gets too low. And then you saw it start to stabilize at about the halfway point, and then you saw it hit the ground running this year. He had a really good big league camp. And the numbers stuff with Guzzi and Rada is one thing. And then there's kind of the behind-the-scenes fundamental stuff where you see, I'm going to sound old school whenever I say this, you see signs of toughness, you see signs of grit, you see signs of them developing as a teammate, you see signs of them developing as a person that are they're equally to, if not more important, than some of the on-field stat columns that are starting to fill too. So really, really pleased with their growth, and really, really, I think even more pleased with how well-rounded the growth was.
When you go into the individual development, which as you mentioned before, is really the goal for the organization, producing guys that will produce for the Angels, how difficult can that be when you have some guys that are individually contributing, but it's not showing up necessarily in the wins and losses?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. And it's the hardest part on the manager, because I think you feel, anybody that's done this or sat in this chair, you feel responsible for every individual, and then you feel responsible for the group as a whole. And so it's, not only do you feel responsible, to the team and the environment there and the individual development, you feel a sense of responsibility to the fans too. And so sometimes, the goals are not always mutually aligned. And that's really, really difficult. And that can tear at you a little bit. I'm better at it than I was 3 or 4 years ago, not anywhere near perfect. There's been parts of this season that have been difficult from a leadership standpoint. But again, you just do your best to delineate between the two. And then I think too, really the kind of the key to that is the ability to, it's such a long season, and breaking it up into small battles, realizing that it's all a part of learning, and then breaking it up into 138 consecutive single day battles. And so that's what we've done our best to do. That's what we've done our best to do to this point. And just to plug the staff a little bit, probably the best staff that I've ever been a part of. Not only from a technical and a teaching standpoint, but just their steadiness and their commitment to the players, and their resolve to keep everything positive and productive. If you didn't look at our record, if you didn't know our record, and you walked into our clubhouse, or you walked, or you watched a work day, you wouldn't have any idea. And so I think that's what makes me most proud of our players, and 100% most proud of our staff also.
One thing that a bunch of the media members learned this year is that apparently you guys can take vacation during the season. We had no idea that was something you could do beforehand. Why this year did you decide to take it when in years past you had opted out of it?
There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But I think when you look at this year, and the other thing that can get a little bit lost on people is that you are a manager, but you're also a dad. And I have been very, very fortunate to be in every day of 3 consecutive Major League camps, and then also had the opportunity to work in instructional leagues that run through the middle of October. And then last year, having the ability to manage in the fall league, not only to be a part of it, to be able to manage and be able to lead one of those groups, was an unbelievable honor, but one that started on September 25th. It did not stop until November 20th. And so you're looking at flying home the week of Thanksgiving, and then too, again, once the calendar rolls over and you're talking about a January mini camp, and then you fly out the Monday after the Super Bowl, it can cut into things from a family standpoint. And so there are certain things and certain times where you have to hit pause, and you have to go back to be a dad, and being able to lump it into the All-Star break to give you a little bit of a chance to reset and have a pocket of time at home with your family was awesome for my family. I don't know if you'd have to ask my wife if she enjoyed having me around that much or not, but grateful that the organization gives us that. And it's just, again, it's never just one thing, but when you look at how last year kind of rolled into this year, it was the right time to do it.
Going back to the individuals for a second, obviously George had a gem last night, a guy that really has had a tough season, takes the comeback or off the head, but still makes it to the Futures game, and then he's really kind of put it together his last 3 or 4 starts. What can you say about the toughness that he's shown this year?
I think, too, it's like toughness is not all about getting it right the first time you go through it. It's about being able to take a punch in the gut. Maybe you don't handle it, or maybe there's a little bit of wobble, or maybe there's a little bit of doubt that creeps in, and then just a willingness to show back up. And I think last night, specifically the 7th inning for Georgie, he was so good for 5 innings. We made a little bit of a hiccup behind him in the 6th. He goes back out at the 88 pitch mark and maybe has the best stuff he's had since he's been here, and that's saying something with some of the single game performances that he's put together. The stuff he had in the 7th, and to be able to finish that, to be able to finish it, and then that's what he's sleeping on going into his offseason. I think, too, again, there are small wins and there are individual wins that are going to pay dividends long term, and you don't ever know. You don't ever know what one moment's going to mean. But last night is an awesome punctuation on a really, really talented kid who's maturing mentally and emotionally and physically and from a toughness standpoint just as much as he is on the mound. I don't think we could have asked for a better end of the season to springboard him into his offseason and into Major League camp next year.
Another guy who had been showing us flashes all year and then actually got a chance to show it in the big leagues, Mitch Ferris. First game, gets a win, strikes out Bobby Witt Jr. He had a high ERA here all year, but led the league in strikeouts. What did you know about him that maybe we weren't seeing that now they're seeing at the major league level?
I mean, I just think when you look at the miss numbers, and specifically the end zone miss numbers, they were just otherworldly. And sometimes, too, Mitch is – you can't really describe somebody that gets that much swing and miss as sneaky, but if there is such thing as sneaky elite swing and miss, at least at the AA level, like that is Mitch Ferris. And you just saw it kind of slowly, steadily start to trend up. You saw the pitchability start to trend up. You'd see some stuff metrically on some pitches here and there that it's like, hey, this is starting to trend in the right direction. And then you combine that with just how steady he was too. And I think too, something else that goes unnoticed, some of his best outings were against Columbus. And nobody's going to have a better scouting report on him than the Braves. And so it's like, regardless of the information that other players had or the familiarity that other teams had with him, he was still getting the same results, and they were actually trending in the right direction. And then I think, too, you see the poise and the competitiveness that he's been able to translate and really focus in on what he's doing and not necessarily where he's doing it at. Again, another evidence of a maybe not even a small victory, but a very, very large victory for our player development department that's not necessarily going to be reflected in the standings, but hopefully has a chance to impact the organization in the future.
You look back to the beginning of the season, Oscar Colas, not part of the organization. Since he's joined, he has come up with clutch moment after clutch moment. How much has he meant to the team?
One thing about him, the visible stuff speaks for itself. The physical tools speak for itself. I mean, when he was with Birmingham, you talk about some of the balls he hit in this ballpark as a visiting player in 2022 that you still, maybe him and Trey Cabbage and Ellie De La Cruz, but you can count the people on one hand. There's been some good players come through here. But the one thing people don't know that I would, from an impact standpoint and just kind of an intangible standpoint about him, is he's the smartest player on our roster. A very, very intelligent player that knows the game, that is a smart base runner, that understands the strategy, that understands fundamentals. He is as cerebral of a player as what we have on our roster. And one, too, that sometimes a change of scenery is a good thing. And he gets a little bit of a change of scenery. He gets a second chance. Acclimating to a new organization is not always the easiest thing to do, and he's had his own bumps too. But he's playing the steadiest brand that he's played to this point, and hopefully this year too, getting a change of scenery, the second half that he's been able to put together here can springboard him in the future also.
We mentioned obviously the individual development that we saw all year, not necessarily translating to the wins and losses, but is there a moment or maybe a series that stands out to you as your proudest moment from this season?
You wouldn't know it. Sunday in Knoxville. Sunday in Knoxville. There are a lot of them that if you go back, but if you ask me to pick one, we got to be 3-1. But if you look at the way the team played, and you look at Walbert Urena, somebody else that we haven't talked about yet, who may be as talented as anybody in minor league baseball, gets ambushed in the first inning for 3 runs. Credit to the Cubs. They had a good game plan. For him to be able to keep his emotions in check, adjust on the fly, and go another 5 or 6 innings after that, I'd have to defer to Chris on how many innings he actually went. But to watch him settle in, be able to adjust his game plan on the fly, and be able to execute and stay stable and give us a quality start, one, and then how hard the position player group played. It didn't translate to success, but a couple of breaking up a double play to extend an inning, the way that we played defensively, the way that we stayed in the fight, the number of times that you got the tying run to the plate with our record like it is, with blowing 4 saves in a week, with losing 4 one-run games, which the same thing happened to us in Birmingham a couple weeks ago. It's just, for me, from a leader standpoint, I was so proud of how the team competed and how they responded and how they continue to just play the game to a certain standard, regardless of what the results have been. That, to me, is something that you can count on long term. And again, regardless of how many of us stay in baseball for the next 10 or 15 years, that's the type of group of people that I want to be involved with. And so I was so proud of how they played, so proud of how we pitched. 3 shutout innings from Ryan Smith Sam Ryan, excuse me, on the back end of that. Sunday, and it's not a walk-off win. It's not sexy, but it would have been an easy day to mail it in and play out the string, and it may be the hardest that we played all year, so I was very, very proud of that.
Last question's the hardest one, but it's coming. Would you like to be back here next year?
I love this organization, and I love this place. And again, you don't ever know what's going to happen in the future. But just for me personally, I couldn't ask for a better assignment. I couldn't ask for a better place. I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. So the answer to that question is always going to be yes.